Sorry. Welcome to the Revere Conservation Commission meeting for June 4th, 2024. For those that would like to, let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, roll call. Samantha Woodman, she's absent. Wilson Correa, he's absent. Nicholas Rudolph? Here. Bernardo?
Here.
Joe LaValle?
Here.
Brian Everback?
Here.
John Shu. So we have 5 members. We have a quorum. A majority would be 3 of the members here tonight. So, review and approval of the meeting minutes from May 1st. Were there any corrections, additions, deletions?
Looks good.
All right, accept a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as they are.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. All right, so first up is a continuation of a public hearing. It's an ANRAD, a resource area delineation. DEP file number 061-0821. The applicant is the City of Revere. This is 190 VFW. It's basically the Wonderland site. The ANRAD is asking for confirmation of wetland resource boundaries, bordering land subject to flooding, and isolated wetlands not protected by the Wetlands Protection Act. When we get to the point where we seek input from the public, this is not about the high school. This is just about the wetlands, the wetland delineation, and whether some of these isolated wetlands deserve protection under the city ordinance or not. So we welcome any comments with regards to that. Prior to us closing the hearing, I will review tentative motions that I will throw out there for other commissioners to either make a motion or change, so that at that point in time, the public can also comment on those motions if they think they're adequate or appropriate. And then we'll close the hearing and then we'll vote. So first up is state your name and address for the record.
Sure. For the record, Claire Hogeboom, wetland scientist with LEC Environmental Consultants, here on behalf of the applicant, the City of Fall River. Joining me is Dave Conway with Niche Engineering. They prepared the bordering land subject to flooding report that accompanied the ANRAD.
So I think the first thing, Claire, is since the initial application, we've had at least one walk down, several others, and I think you've modified some things, and maybe you could just go over what's changed for the commissioners.
Yes, absolutely. So on May 6th, I walked the site with a few of the commission members and the peer reviewer, David Cameron, with Fleetwood Environmental Solutions. And generally, the wetland boundaries and mean annual high water boundaries associated with the Eastern County Ditch were acceptable to the peer reviewer in the field. We just made a few minor revisions, so I just went to sheet 1. This is in the sort of southwesternmost portion of the property, just west of the former dog racetrack. We have these 2 non-bordering freshwater wetlands, the C and D series. The peer reviewer just asked that we placed a few flags up gradient of the previously delineated wetland boundary. I had no problem with that. They were placed to include some areas of evidence of standing water and some wetland plant community vegetation. So we made those adjustments. Survey came out to the site and located those flags, placed them on these revised plans. The other slight revision, So this plan is the Eastern County Ditch, sort of in the western portion of the site. We have Dunn Road here. That green is the bordering vegetated wetland, or the E-Series BVW, that is associated with the Eastern County Ditch. The peer reviewer asked that we remove 2 flags where the wetland bumped in and just connect 2 flags adjoining those to include another area that had wetland vegetation and some evidence of high groundwater table. In yellow here is where the old flags were, so we just made the connection and eliminated those 2 flags from the wetland boundary delineation. Otherwise, very minor other revisions to the plans. I believe one of the commission members at the last meeting requested that we include the 200-foot riverfront area on site, so that was added, extending from the mean annual high water boundary to Eastern County Ditch. And the plan date has been revised. I think a previous iteration, the cover letter didn't really match, or the cover page didn't match the rest of the plan set. So the, I believe, May 28th date of the plan set is reflected on every sheet of the plan. So we provided that to the peer reviewer, to the commission, along with a short summary letter of those revisions. We received a peer review letter from the peer reviewer, and that's sort of been the gist of things since we were last before you all in April.
Any questions from any of the commissioners? I'm going to have the peer reviewers speak after Claire, so we can ask more questions then, but any for Claire right now?
So I just want to clarify, so the peer reviewers will speak after her and then you'll make your comments after the peer review or before?
I will make comments after David Cameron speaks, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you want Dave Conway from Niche to point anything out with the BLSF report, or wait until later?
Do we have anything to add to the niche report?
I don't think so. Perhaps the peer reviewer will point things out when he
Yeah.
summarizes his findings. He did have some questions for Niche that they clarified for him, and one page in their report was revised to include some cross sections to be clear on the references there. But you know, happy to have him explain his findings and his questions and responses
Okay.
from Niche. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So if it's okay with you, I think we'll let David come on.
Sure.
Thank you,
Should I
Claire.
stand or sit?
No, just turn the mic off, yeah.
Hi, can you folks hear me okay?
There we go. So, Mr. Cameron, can you introduce yourself and just a little bit of your background? And then kind of go into your findings and summary?
Certainly. Can everybody hear me first of all?
Yes.
Okay. I'm David Cameron. I'm a professional wetland scientist, founder and owner of Fleetwood Environmental Solutions, LLC. I was retained by the City of Revere to provide a objective, neutral peer review of the ANRAD that was submitted for this site, which is a collection of 6 separate parcels identified by the assessors of Revere. I, as Claire indicated, joined the commission and Claire and a civil engineer from Niche Engineering on a site evaluation in the field on May 6th. Prior to that, I did a desktop assessment, first of the ANRAD and its appendices and the Niche BLSF report. And then I did an independent desktop evaluation that consisted of looking at all sorts of publicly accessible resource maps and online tools to evaluate watershed sizes, and spent a significant amount of time looking at historic aerial images and historic topographic maps for the site, which was very interesting. So my report, which I submitted, I believe a week ago, tomorrow, is broken down into 3 primary sections: the methodology section, the findings, and then recommendations for the commission to consider. I just outlined what the methods were that I used to do this work. Oh, I should mention that I also took a very careful look at Title 16 of the City of Revere's ordinances, which relates to, I think it's titled Environment, but it's related specifically to wetlands protection. So I did take a very close look at that as well. As far as my findings went, and I expected this based on the desktop review, but the site is almost completely level. It's very disturbed. Based on looking at historic aerial photographs and topographic maps, it looks like the entire site was a tidal marsh, probably until the late 30s, late 1930s. The oldest map goes back, at least the oldest map that I was able to access goes back to 1892, and it shows the entire site as a tidal marsh back then, with some mosquito ditches in it. I looked at aerial photographs that started in 1938. I believe that was the earliest date that went all the way to the present. And I looked with specific interest at the interior of the former dog track, and I'll come back to that later, but that's an area that was looked at pretty closely by Niche and LEC in terms of whether or not it met the criteria to be a resource area under the Wetlands Protection Act. This isolated land-subject to flooding. And I was surprised to see no evidence of standing water in the dog track in any of those aerial images. When we did see standing water in the dog track when we did the site evaluation, so that was curious. As far as the review of the ANRAD form goes, I didn't find any errors or omissions in the form. Everything looks complete. Again, the site is very disturbed. It's relatively level. In many places, it's dominated by common reed. Latin name is Phragmites australis, which is, as I'm sure most of the commission members know, is an invasive exotic species that roots in wetlands and then can spread all over the place, including on top of fill piles, well into uplands, and on top of pavement and cement. So it makes for delineating the legal wetland boundaries for a site like this. It can be extremely challenging. Overall, I think LEC did a very good job finding the legal boundaries of the resource areas on the site. As Claire mentioned, I found 3 small areas associated with wetland C, wetland D, those are isolated wetlands, and then wetland E, that I thought the boundary should be bumped out a little bit. We talked about that, we deliberated about those areas in the field, we came to consensus, and those changes were made in the field, and subsequently they have been reflected on the revised site plans dated May 28th, 2024. Bear with me, I'm looking at my notes. I did have some questions, as Claire alluded to, for Niche Engineering about certain elements of the bordering land subject to flooding evaluation. I think the commission members understand this, but for the benefit of them and the public, if you look at Federal Emergency Management Agency flood insurance rate maps for this site, it shows the entire site encapsulated by the 100-year storm event. But it's a combination of the coastal storm surge plus overbank flooding from the Eastern County ditch. And so Niche's evaluation was intended to try to tease those two things apart because they're recognized as separate individual resource areas under the Wetlands Protection Act. One is a coastal resource area and one is an inland resource area. And that's what the Bordering Land Subject to Flooding report outlines in quite a bit of detail. I'm not an engineer myself, but I've had to review many reports just like this. So I understand how the calculations are derived. I understand how the modeling works. And the way most models work is, you know, if you provide good inputs, you get a good output and good results. And if you have junk that goes in, you get junk that goes out. So what I really focused on was looking at the variables or the factors, the model inputs that were used to come up with the BLSF elevation, as well as the ILSF calculations that they did for Wetland B, which is the former dog track. And I found that that work was done in a technically sound manner. I had a few questions for bordering lands up to flooding. I wanted some clarification on whether or not LEC or Niche had found any connection between the, I guess it would be the northwestern edge of the Eastern County ditch on the site, and whether or not there was any hydrologic connection beneath the MBTA tracks to the marshes north of the site. I did not see an apparent connection when I was at the site, and based on the work that the two firms did, they were not able to find anything either, and I believe they reviewed city utility records as well. So that's important because the calculations that were done were based on a specific watershed, and that watershed or that drainage area did not include areas north of the MBTA tracks, and so that's why I asked that specific question. I had a question about how they came up with the so-called curve number from one of the subcatchments, subcatchment 1A. I'm not sure how familiar the commission or the public is with curve numbers, but it's basically it's a value that's assigned to a specific type of landform or land use that helps calculate essentially how quickly water moves across a surface, how quickly stormwater moves across the surface based on whether it's vegetated, what kind of vegetation it is, whether it's a roof or pavement or a driveway or gravel. And Mitch provided good clarification on that question, so that was answered. And I also asked them to update the cross sections that they prepared for the Eastern County ditch. They did a series of cross sections. I believe they did, might be 50, to help determine the BLSF elevation. And the stations just weren't labeled in the report and oversight, so I asked them to label those. They provided an updated version of that report with labels on those stations, and they all look to make sense to me. And as far as ILSF goes, I asked for clarification for how Niche came up with the determination that Wetland B did not hold the minimum requisite depth of water, which is 6 inches. Their determination based on the modeling was that it came out to be 5.16 inches, which I think correlates to 0.43 feet. And they provided clarification to me on how they derived that number too. So all of the questions that I had were answered in the revisions to the ANRAD, and I guess that brings me to the recommendations that I provided in my report. I had 5 separate recommendations. The first recommendation was that based on my review of the materials as well as my on-site evaluation, that I think the resource areas have been adequately delineated and that an ORAD is probably warranted to be issued. I suggested that the map that LEC submitted to the assessor's office when they requested the certified abutters list, which I included in Appendix A of my report, be used as a map that would be attached to any ORAD, and that polygon that encapsulates those 6 parcels be called the study area. I've seen a lot of ANRADs submitted and a lot of ORADs issued that don't clearly define a study area, especially when you're talking about multiple parcels, and that can have really confusing implications for subsequent permit applications and work. So that's why I had that suggestion. I indicated to the commission that based on the small watershed size of the Eastern County ditch that the commission and/or the applicant might want to consider monitoring stream flows in that ditch to determine whether in fact it's actually perennial. It's presumptively perennial based on the way it shows up on the most current USGS map. Again, this is just a recommendation, but I found Title 16 to be, is fairly simple bylaw for wetlands that could probably use a little bit of clarification. And that comment was based on I guess the struggle many of us had with what to do with the former dog track that clearly is showing hydrology and a wetland plant community now, and whether or not areas like that were intended to be captured by this bylaw. And my final suggestion was that although the wetlands on the site, especially the qualifying wetlands or the isolated wetlands, are clearly disturbed, they're highly disturbed, based on the setting of the site in its proximity to Rumney Marsh. It's one of, if you look on Google Earth and then you kind of gradually zoom out, you can see that it's one of the only pieces of real estate left in Revere that has any open space or green space left on it. And I think that it seems to me that the carrying capacity of the surrounding natural wetlands and waterways are probably at capacity. And there's been spillover, and there's clearly usage of this site by wildlife. When we were walking around the site, there were even breeding pairs of mallards playing in the puddles on top of the asphalt or using those for habitat. There was a breeding pair of mallards in, I believe it's wetland C, which is one of the isolated wetlands. Again, that they're very disturbed, but they do provide habitat, aquatic habitat, wildlife habitat, as well as a number of other functions. And there are certainly opportunities on this project site for ecological enhancement if that's something that could be compatible with any subsequent site build out. And I think that's all I had.
All right. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for you. So two things. One, I just wanted to make sure that you said that, just to confirm, you would approve the ANRAD. And I want to know if you could just talk a little bit more about the perennial streams. As you mentioned with this project, if you think that it would be fine, the way the ANRAD set up, everything's set up with those. Because I saw you mention that and reading through the report, everything from the mosquito ditches from 100 years ago and things like that. It was very interesting, but that was the part that I really wanted some more clarification on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so that would depend on what the applicant wants to do. If the applicant wants to move forward and have the commission issue an ORAD based on how things are reflected on the site plans right now, the opportunity to refute the presumptive perennial nature of the Eastern County ditch would be lost for the duration of the ORAD that's issued. So that's something the applicant would need to consider. It's hard to say whether or not that thing flows year round or has water in it year round or not. I saw fish in it, small fish, when I was on site. Generally, that's a sign that something doesn't dry out, but it's also got a really small watershed. It's difficult to know exactly what the hydrology is that drives that ditch. Is it a combination of groundwater discharge or high groundwater and drainage coming off the site in the watershed, or a combination of those things and other factors? It's difficult to say. I just wanted to point it out that, in a lot of settings in the Commonwealth, when you have a stream with a contributing drainage area that's as small as the Eastern County ditch does, at least at this reach, that often those turn out to be intermittent. They dry out, in July and August. So I just wanted to toss that out there for consideration.
Any other questions for David? So just kind of make sure I'm clear, David. The wetlands B, C, D, and F, they are isolated wetlands providing some value, but the whole area is pretty disrupted. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Claire, did you have any questions for David, or? No, or, okay. So before we go to getting input from the audience, so let me just get raise a hand. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this delineation? No? All right. I'll keep the hearing open just for the time being. So our task, what we were asked in the ANRAD is all these wetlands have been delineated and identified. Do we agree with those delineations? Then we have 4 freshwater wetlands that are isolated wetlands. They are not protected under the Wetlands Protection Act, but because of the vagueness of the Title 16 Environment Ordinance, they do fall under that. Now, it does provide the commission a lot of latitude because it's kind of vague, but it also provides the applicant a lot of latitude also on what they can do with things like that. So we need to discuss and then vote on should those wetlands be protected under the city's ordinance. And then if we're going to protect them, some of it or all of it or none of it, if we protect some of it or all of it, then what we were asked also in the ANRAD was what would the commission want for mitigation if those isolated wetlands were filled in the future. We're also going to approve the extents of the elevation for bordering land subject to flooding. I've looked at that report. I lost a whole day going through modeling, and we're going to approve that because that is important in this. We're going to approve the delineation of the Eastern County Ditch and the associated 200-foot riverfront area. And then we'll have a discussion on the mitigation aspect of those wetlands if we decide to protect them or not. Since I don't think anyone's really going to speak to it, I'm just going to kind of, go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Chair, is David still on?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask this. Was there ever any evidence of vernal pools in the area, David?
I don't think anything was identified by LEC in their report. There's nothing that's mapped by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program on the site as either a potential vernal pool or a certified vernal pool. And I didn't see any overt signs that any of the isolated wetlands on the property currently provide vernal pool habitat. I mean, physically, they have the characteristics that they potentially could, but if the species aren't there, they're not vernal pools. And I didn't see any apparent signs that they're functioning as vernal pools.
Okay. All right, so just, these are my thoughts, and you guys chime in, and this is going to be our discussion before we close the hearing and then actually formally vote. If I look at all those isolated wetlands, they're kind of degraded. They perform some function and value. It's kind of happened over time through lack of maintenance, but they are providing habitat. They are providing some function, and my personal feeling is that there should be some mitigation required if those are filled in the future. Secondly, and I've kind of felt this since the beginning when we received the ORAD, I think it's too early for us to decide on what that mitigation is. I think the developer, when they get ready to submit the notice of intent, for whatever is going to be built there, in pre-application meetings, they should be able to sit down and present and say, you know, after we've done our whole design and we've complied with all the other agencies that we haven't yet really met with and done, this is what we're left with on the site, and this is what we can do in mitigation for filling this, and let them present to the commission what their plan is to mitigate at that point in time, and then have it as a discussion and a negotiation with the commission, rather than vote on it tonight. I think it just boxes us in, and it's going to box the developer in.
Chair Shu, I would just ask, is there currently an ask from the city and from the developers specific to what you're saying of what they want, or is it more currently
Nope.
vague?
They have not asked us what they want. They've not presented us with anything that they're, would potentially be willing to do on a future project. So left to that, what they asked is if indeed the commission's going to say these wetlands should be protected under the ordinance, if we want to fill them, what would the commission want to be able to fill them?
Could we ask of the city if they wouldn't mind discussing that now? Would that, I feel like if they do have that answer and they're here, it would make sense to at least help our decision-making now and in the future.
Yeah, I don't think they're prepared, and really my intent is to kind of pull this out of the ANRAD, because it's really not part of an ANRAD process. The ANRAD process should be for resource area delineation. And then they go and they do their design, and then they come to us and say, here's what we can do for mitigation.
Could I possibly ask of the chair of allowing the mayor to speak on behalf of this?
So this is for the delineation
Yes.
and determining should these be protected or not. Whatever future projects planned for there is immaterial. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to state,
Can we know who you are,
Mr.
but-
Chair, John Shu, Patrick Keefe, 44 Kilburn Street, so 281 Broadway, Mayor of Revere, also Chair of the School Committee. Like the commission, the Chair has stated, it's not the project in the scope that's really up for discussion. You're all doing a wonderful job in working with peer review and consultants to ensure that the proper area and the property is protected. I think that everyone agrees with that. That's the intent for all of us. The great news is it's the city of Revere that's the owner and the eventual developer. So we have that. We have every intention to make sure that we maintain that site, what the future building is going to behold, but also preserving wetlands and making sure that it's also an ecological learning environment. So I know that you're going to agree upon your delineations tonight, which I don't think there's any dispute on, nor would we have any justification. And leaving it a little bit open-ended for the Revere and Revere Conservation Commission rules for later discussion, I think is actually, that flexibility we very much appreciate, because it gives us an opportunity to really show the Conservation Commission what the project is going to look like in full, and I think that it just shows how much restoration on the entire project that you'll see and really amplify the entire environment. So I appreciate your flexibility with this, Commissioner or Chairman Shu. Thank you very much.
So I think the mayor kind of summed it up. I mean, indeed, the developer could come up with a design and say, if we put a number on, we want you to replicate X amount, and then they get to their design, what if they can't? But they could offer other things. It's going to put the ball in their court to be innovative and come back at us what they can do to enhance existing wetlands and to mitigate, the filling of these 4 things that were never really meant to be a wetlands.
Chair Shu, I would ask, is this the point where we would make the vote on or make a motion for the vote for the delineation of the wetlands, of approving it?
We're coming up to that really quick. But that's kind of my plan, is to get one of you to make a motion to delay and wait on determining what the mitigation should be for a potential future filling of wetlands B, C, D, and F,
So I would speak to the rest of the commission, see if anyone has any opposition to me making that motion.
Well, let's go in order, and we'll come to that last, okay? All right. So I'll need someone to make these motions. We can discuss them. First of all, does anyone else want to speak before I close the hearing? All right, I need a motion to close the hearing. Oh, Claire?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I actually just had a thought in relation to the peer reviewer's comment on the perennial stream status and that, you know, it would be locked in for 3 years through the ORAD. I'm curious if the commission would be open to including some language in the ORAD that allows the applicant to present information if we're able to collect it during the lifetime of the ANRAD. If we have the 4 days of dry conditions observed, if we'd be able to return to the commission and present that in order to sort of prove an intermittent status during the lifetime of the ORAD.
I can
It just sort
pull,
of came to my mind after
Yeah, I
Mr. Cameron
know.
brought that up.
so my inclination is that should have already been determined.
As you know, we've had on and off
Yeah.
moments of site
Yeah.
access to the site, so we currently have not been able to collect that type of
I
information.
mean, we can vote on a motion to not confirm the delineation of the Eastern County ditch. And then, I don't know what the difference is if it happens, if it's perennial or not, or intermittent.
All right, I just thought I would put it
Yeah.
out there, but I think we would probably prefer to have the boundaries approved and move on from that.
Yeah, I mean, the other way to do it would be to continue this hearing and give you a month to sort it out.
I can't imagine we could find the data in the next month, so
Yeah, okay,
just thought I'd put it out there.
okay.
All right, thank you.
So I'm going to read a draft of a potential motion. Feel free to discuss it, change the wording, make it your own, or say that you want to make this motion or not. I can't make motions, I can only entertain them and suggest, so. So this first one reads, is a motion's requested to approve the delineation of wetlands B, C, D, and F as depicted in the Resource Area Delineation Plan of Land 8 sheets prepared by BSE Group dated May 28th, 2024. So B, C, D, and F are the isolated wetlands. Both LEC and David Cameron agree that the boundaries are correct. So if we can get a motion to approve the delineation of those wetlands B, C, D, and F?
I'll make a motion to approve the delineation of B, C, D, and F.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All right. Second motion's requested to approve the determination. And you so I need a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
All in favor?
The second.
Second.
no,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, hearing's closed, all right. So here's the second motion. Motion's requested to approve the determination that wetlands B, C, D, and F are isolated wetlands not subject to the Wetlands Protection Act, but are subject to the City of Revere Title 16 Environmental Ordinance as freshwater wetlands. This would pull this into, we would say we would protect that under the ordinance, which would imply we would want some mitigation at some later date if they're filled. Now, if you want to do all four, or if you don't want to include F in that, or D, I mean, this is what's up for discussion.
Do you want to?
You turn your open discussion.
I would say that 3 of these wetlands that we've observed and have delineated at this point serve no real function to the enhancement of the property. They are, in some cases, in concrete depressions. They are in areas that are very broken down. So I would say that 3 of these, excluding the dog track, would not be viable wetlands moving forward. There are wetlands of opportunity in a sense.
So you would not include in that motion C, D, and F? F was very, very tiny, C had the little pond on it where we saw the two birds, and D was that little,
The sliver that was up near.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what I would say.
So your motion is,
Excluding D, C, and F. E is the dog track, correct?
all right, so let me reword the motion and then someone can, so a motion's requested to approve the determination that wetlands B is an isolated wetland, not subject to the Wetlands Protection Act, but is subject to the City of Revere Title 16 Environmental Ordinance.
So you want a motion for that?
Yes.
I'll do my best to remember this. I'll make a motion that B is subject to, say one more time,
The Title 16
Title 16
Environmental
environmental
Ordinance.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And then we'll follow that up. A motion's requested to approve the determination that wetlands C, D, and F are isolated wetlands not subject to the Wetlands Protection Act and also are not subject to the City of Revere Title 16 Environmental Ordinance.
I'll make a motion that C, D, and F are isolated wetlands that are not
Subject to
subject to
the WPA and
WPA
the city's
and the
ordinance.
city's ordinances.
I'll second that.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. A motion's requested to approve the delineation of wetlands A and E. So maybe Claire, can you point out A and E? So this is basically the Eastern County ditch.
Yes, so the A series is on the, I guess, eastern side of the Eastern County ditch. A series is along this side of the Eastern County ditch and has a little Finger Lake extension coming out along the property boundary. E series is on the opposite side and has this larger portion.
So the motion is to approve the delineation of wetlands A and E as depicted in the Resource Area Delineation Plan of Land 8 sheets prepared by BSC Group dated May 28th, 2024. So I need a motion to approve the delineation of wetlands A and E.
I'll make a motion to approve the wetlands delineation of A and E.
All right.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So those are protected by the Wetlands Protection Act. A motion's requested to approve the delineation of the Eastern County ditch and the associated 200-foot riverfront area boundary on either side as depicted in the Resource Area Delineation Plan of Land, 8 sheets prepared by BSC Group dated May 28, 2024.
Make a motion to approve the delineation of the Eastern County ditch and the
Riverfront area.
riverfront area.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. This next one's in regards to bordering land subject to flooding. So this is kind of important because some of this bordering land subject to flooding, if it's ever filled in a future development, there are rules and regulations about having to replicate that lost storage somewhere else at the same elevation, that type of thing. When we heard from both LEC, Nitch, and David, you know, our peer reviewer agreed with the calculations. So here's the motion. Motion's requested to approve the extents, in parentheses, site elevations up to 4.55 feet, and the reference is NAVD 88, it's an elevation reference, of the bordering land subject to flooding as calculated in the Niche Engineering Bordering Land Subject to Flooding Study dated March 6, 2024, and depicted in the drawings BLSF-100 through 106, dated 2/29/2024, that were included in the ANRAD application. So I need a motion to approve basically the calculation and the elevation of 4.55 for BLSF.
I'll make a motion to approve the calculation and the site elevation of 4.55 feet.
All right, so anything up to that qualifies as bordering land subject to flooding. So, let me reword it. A motion to approve the elevation
I'll make a motion to approve the elevation,
of 4.55 feet,
4.55 feet,
which will be anything up to that elevation
which
will
will be
be
anything up
bordering
to that
land subject to
elevation
flooding.
of bordering subject to flooding.
Yeah.
Need a second.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And the last one is going to be a request and entertain a motion to delay determining what the mitigation would be for any potential filling of wetland B, which is the racetrack, until a later date when we have a more fleshed out design and see what the developer can do. Does that make sense? We're not gonna determine what the mitigation is tonight on wetlands B.
I'll make a motion to delay wetlands B delineation,
Second.
Mitigation.
mitigation, excuse me.
And you got a
Got
second.
a second?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I think that's all of them.
Do we need to vote on, or do you need to vote on the ILSF acceptance that the ILSF calculations determining the racetrack does not meet the criteria?
Okay, yes.
I think you may have already done that. It's a good question, Claire. I was asking the same thing, but I think the commission made a motion and approved the motion to not consider wetland B a state resource area. Did it not?
We did,
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
okay. I just wanted to
okay.
double check and thank you.
Is
Mr.
it better
Cameron, for
safe than
triple check.
sorry to do it, just in case there's any opposition? I
It
just
wouldn't hurt
want to
to be-
cross the Ts.
Wouldn't hurt to be explicit about it.
Do you want to do it just to be sure?
Sure. So entertain a motion to approve the determination that the racetrack is not isolated land subject to flooding.
I'll make a motion to approve that the racetrack is not isolated due to flooding.
Isolated land.
Isolated land subject to flooding.
Right. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. That's the ORAD. So later on down the road, I think the commissioners would expect to see, along with pre-application meetings and discussions on if there's going to be potential filling of the racetrack, what would the developer propose to mitigate that?
Completely understandable. We expect to do that.
Okay.
We appreciate all your time and consideration. Thank you very much. Thank you to David
All right.
Cameron for his thoughtful peer review as well.
Great. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. That's kind of brutal. All right, I apologize, everyone else in the audience. We do have a rather full agenda, but it should go much faster. Next up is a continuation for the determining the request for determination of applicability from the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority to confirm the wetland delineation along the MBTA's right-of-way in Revere as part of a new vegetated management plan. If the commissioners remember, we didn't get a chance to walk this down prior to the previous meeting. Also, there was some concern about the extent of the maps that they had delineated. The maps have been changed. It only includes wetlands that are immediately along their right-of-way, and I have gone and looked at all that, and the boundaries look fine. So, is Calvin here?
Yes, I'm here. as well as Alicia Thomas from the MBTA is here as well.
All right. Do you have any comments or anything, Colin or Alicia?
No, just that this is we're here every 5 years with the new VMP, and the big change this year was that we had redid a full delineation of the wetlands, and really, I think the BSC did a good job, and that is reflected in the detailed maps, giving us excellent boundaries for our vegetation management program.
Okay. So what you're looking for in the RDA is a affirmation that the boundaries are correct, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So entertain a motion to approve the request for determination of applicability, that the boundaries for those wetlands along the right-of-way is correct as depicted.
Make a motion to approve the applicability that the boundaries are correct as mentioned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passed. We'll get that out probably early next week.
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your efforts.
All right, thank you. I didn't get a response. Is someone here for 102 Summer Street?
Okay.
All right, so next up is another continuation, notice of intent, DEP file number 061-0815, owner Stephen Lakis, 102 Summer Street. This original notice of intent was for the removal of an in-ground pool, garage, and replacement of a retention wall. We've had several site visits. The owner had to go back and get engineering done for an engineered retention wall, and then because work was being done on adjacent property that the owner did not own, we also had to get something from those owners giving permission to move forward on this. Did you, so you can state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Ryan Rosine, I'm with Goddard Consulting, 291 Main Street in Northborough. So we have not yet received the signed application forms from the three owners of 96 Summer Street. We've been in conversations with them, and we actually, Jamie's here tonight, who's is going to speak in a little bit. Me and applicant and Jamie had a call earlier this afternoon to discuss some of the outstanding items that, are their concern, with the new retaining wall. So we're going to be working through that. So we're not expecting this to close tonight. So we will want to push this off to another meeting. But I did want to just show you this proposed retaining wall since you guys have not seen this plan yet. So I can go through it. So just to refamiliarize the commission, there's the existing single detached garage, shed, and landing that's being removed. And then the swimming pool and the concrete around it is being removed and filled in. And so basically we met with the building commissioner, and he was sort of unsure. He basically said he needs an engineered plan to determine if the existing wall, that's made up, some of you guys saw it on site, that's up against the street, if it's structural enough to stay. Our project engineer basically said he's not comfortable with it. So that's why we have this proposed retaining wall. So there's basically two sections of the retaining wall. These darker lines here on either side are basically go from, ground level, the current level of it, up to 4 feet. And then over 4 feet, as you know, it needs to be a structurally engineered wall. So we have a precast bin block wall, which we have a detail up here for, as you can see. So those are the much larger precast concrete stones that is going to be put in here. So it basically goes from 4 feet, at the lowest point here, at the top of the wall is 4 feet, and then up to the street level, which is about 7.5, 8 feet. So that's what we're proposing. And so this is along the property line, and as you guys remember, there's this area here is about 9 or 10 feet. That's technically on the other property, which is why we need the signature of the other property owners, which we're working towards.
So that's going to create a gully though, right?
So well, yeah, because So basically, this wall obviously has to be properly backfilled, as shown on the detail. So that whole area is gonna be backfilled, even, you know, the shorter wall is just a regular Versalock retaining wall. That's all gonna have to be properly backfilled, you know, to the existing grade, you know, to match their driveway, because that's the driveway side of them, so it's gonna match that existing grade. So it's gonna be properly backfilled with, proper material. I mean, the detail here calls out, you know, the correct sort of stone. It recommends like 3/4 inch gravel, or crushed stone, and then obviously compacted correctly, and the contractor will, you know all that and everything. So yeah, that whole area will be filled, and then here there's gonna be some fill against the street, just for the structural integrity of the wall, and then, but that's basically gonna be at the wall. So that's that.
And the plan is still to remove the swimming pool, all the
Yes,
concrete,
yep.
and then to fill it,
Fill it
and then top it off with,
top it off with loam
Loam.
and seed it with
Okay.
just grass. It's just gonna be, so basically, once this is all done, it's gonna be the 2 walls, and then this whole area is just gonna be lawn.
okay. Any questions?
Yes, what are the dimensions of these concrete, precast concrete blocks?
Yeah, so they, in here, it's hard to see, actually, I have a copy of the plans if you want them. I have 11 by 17s if you guys would like to look at them now. If you guys, do you guys?
I'll take one.
11, did you say 11 by 17?
It's gonna be hard to read.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's 2 full-size copies as well. So the detail up here in the upper left corner calls out,
4 by 16?
yeah, is that what it's, so the ones on the bottom are larger ones, and then as you get taller, it goes to the smaller ones, so, 39B, that's basically a 39 inch, yeah, 39 inches wide by 16 inches tall. So those are the bigger ones, and then, you know, they get smaller, they get, narrower at the top, but the big.
And are they reinforced interior by rebar or something like that to give them cohesion? Or are they just
Are you
solid
talking like
blocks?
how they're stacked?
But there's no rebar within the block itself?
Inside the block, I don't exactly know. I can get probably some details from the manufacturer on that. I don't know exactly how they're made, but I can get those details for you. But basically, they have these, on this detail, you can see they sort of have like it's sort of like a Lego where they stack on top of each other, and that's how they lock in. But on the inside, you're talking about the inside of the concrete, then I can find that out. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
It's just by past experience, particularly with areas that get inundated with water occasionally, that eventually if there's cracks work their way into the cement and there's nothing to
Right,
kind of
yeah.
act as a bridge of reinforcement inside.
Yeah, I'm
They have-
assuming they have some sort of reinforcement in them, as it's, a concrete block, but I'll get that information for you.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Has the neighbor that lives next door, has she seen and approved this?
So, yes, she's seen this plan. They've had it for a couple weeks now. They had a meeting yesterday, and she can discuss this. You can hear from herself. But she has seen it, and that's what we're working towards. They have some safety concerns, obviously, with this being their driveway and this being basically a 7-foot to 4-foot drop right here. So they're concerned, putting a fence, along here to prevent, liability-wise. So we would end up putting a fence, obviously along the street side, because that's about a 7-8 foot drop. And then, we're discussing putting one along here, and basically this is just coming down to who's paying for it. Is it, the applicant? Is it a combination of, the next door neighbors and that? So that's sort of being worked out right now, but they have seen this, and then once we get all those details worked out, they'll kind of, basically their signatures on the WPA form is their sort of stamp of approval of this plan.
Sure. I mean, my opinion on this and how I honestly plan to vote is, a lot of it is based on the neighbor's opinion of how she feels about this, as it's hugely impacting our property. So just kind of putting that out there to make sure that whatever you do has their approval.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what we're working towards, and in the long run, it is giving them back, the portion of property that, was always sort of theirs, so.
Any other questions for Ryan?
So based on the plans that you have put forth, the stones that'll be resting will be pinned individually, or each layer will be pinned essentially to the next layer to reinforce it. So there would be, if the internals of it are not with rebar and whatnot, it would still have some sort of pinning inside of it to hold it all in place.
Yeah, so those bigger ones, yeah, they'll sort of, connect sort of, and that's why you don't need to use, I believe that's why you don't need to use any sort of adhesive or like pins, like the Versalock wall, you use pins to connect those two, so that for the bigger one, it has those large sort of pieces, like puzzle pieces, basically.
And my last question is, according to the plans, the top layer will be impermeable. Is there a reason for that, or is it so erosion won't take place as you have water events in the neighborhood?
I believe that's the reason why, but I can confirm that with the engineer for you.
Any other questions for Ryan? All right. So if you state your name and address.
Jamie Reinhagen, 96 Summer Street. I'm the trustee of the condo association. So we have looked at these plans. We do have some concerns, especially the fence, the railing, because at the top of our driveway, there will be a significant drop. And at first, they weren't planning on putting something down that line. There's also talk of where that fence is gonna go. When we talked to the owner today, he seemed to think it should go on our property, so then it should be our responsibility. I'm not sure it really should be on our property, since it's to protect anyone falling into their property. So that's something that we need to work out, as well as the backfill that is happening, what is gonna be placed. Right now, it's our driveway. Are they extending our driveway, or is it gonna be gravel? Or, like, we have no answers for those questions. So we're unwilling to sign until we get those answers.
Can I ask do you want them to extend the driveway?
Yes, that would be our ideal preference.
With gravel or?
Right, and our driveway's tar. I don't know what would be approved to use. I mean, right now, we have a tar driveway.
So it would extend, so you
would
have
extend
10 feet. So of that 10
Correct.
feet, I'm just trying to in my head, would the fence be at the end of the 10 feet and then you would have the extended driveway? Is that what you want?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it could go along the retaining wall, because that's how the fence is right now. It's along the wall, but I don't know that Ryan was saying he wasn't sure a fence could go on top of the retaining wall.
Because
I
it seems
just-
like there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be
Yeah.
worked out on
Yeah,
this.
I mean, we did have a productive conversation with the owner today, and, we will continue to talk to him, but at this point, we're not willing to sign off until we have this stuff answered.
I think that's
Because
reasonable.
it's impacting our property.
The swimming pool area is much lower, and it's in land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's probably riverfront part of it and some other things, resource areas. I don't know that your property is in our jurisdiction, other than the piece that's low
Right.
where the pool concrete is. So if you decide, yeah, so we try and avoid blacktop. We would prefer to see pavers if you're gonna extend the driveway wider or something. But that would be, yeah, you just need to make sure that gets included.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that? So you said you'd rather have, if we were to, extend, the driveway, you would prefer pavers over asphalt?
Right, we would not want to create more impermeable area.
Okay, so those pavers you would want to see as permeable pavers?
Could be permeable, it could be permeable asphalt, it could be,
Okay.
you have a whole slew of stuff you could use. I mean,
Okay. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make that
yep.
clarification.
yeah. And we can't, so Jamie, we can't do anything until you sign on to the NOI. And it'll be you in your capacity as the trustee or, Oh, okay, great, great.
They were supposed to come tonight, but.
Nope. So with your guys' permission, we're gonna continue the hearing?
Yep,
And then
that's,
you let us know when you're ready.
yeah, no, so we'll go to your July meeting. I don't know exactly your date for that, but we hope to have everything worked out by the July meeting.
Right.
If we don't, we'll let you know beforehand, but yeah.
Okay, so the meeting in July is July 10th.
Okay.
So you got an extra week.
Okay. that sounds good.
Okay? Everyone agree? All right. Okay, I'm glad you guys are working it out. All right. Lorena just got out of a lot of work. Next up is a request for certificate of compliance, DEP file number 0610741, from Mass Electric, National Grid, Revere to Winthrop 23 kV cable replacement. This has been a long ongoing project. They actually came in and got an extension. We walked this down the other day. Everything's in place. It's all covered up. My recommendation would be to entertain a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next up is a request for determination of applicability at McMacken Field from the city of Revere. They want to do a bunch of demolition work. This had actually come up before us last year, and we held off on making a negative determinant of applicability because one of the commissioners wanted to make sure that this property was not considered isolated land subject to flooding. I don't know if you remember that. So there's specific criteria for that. It has to be isolated hydraulically from anything else. Well, it's not. Water's fed from two places. It comes from a gully. And there's an apartment building that's much higher, and their stormwater drained from the parking lot and all that goes right into McMacken Field, and that's where all the water's coming from. So even though there are wetland species there, I walked it, the water was not more than 4 inches high. I think it has to be 6 inches high, or 5 inches, something like that, but it didn't come to that. So my opinion is, after validating, it's not isolated, it doesn't meet the criteria for depth, it's not in the floodplain, this is just kind of part of the city's drainage, and it's not in our jurisdiction. So I would request a motion to approve the RDA saying that it's basically not in our jurisdiction.
I would like to propose a motion to say that this is not in our jurisdiction. And
Yeah. Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we'll get that out. It's not in our jurisdiction. It's got to follow the normal stuff otherwise.
Chris Chairmella, Superintendent of Public Works, 319 Charter Street. I just want to thank you guys for that. We had a crew out there to start a site survey and borings, and we just wanted delineation from you guys before we move forward with our project.
Yeah, you guys are doing a bunch of stuff, and it should be a park again.
Yeah, that's the whole plan. We want to turn this back into a park.
I don't think we want anything to do with it.
Deteriorated right now, we want to improve the whole situation.
So,
All right, thank you.
all right. So determinations of applicability, just for general knowledge, have to be discussed in a public setting, but it's not a public hearing. It's just, we've decided it's not in our jurisdiction, so we don't have anything much to do with whatever else goes on. If there's other things that are gonna be happening as part of, they're gonna build a stadium or something, you need to get involved at the planning levels, and discuss with them your opposition or for it or not. All right. This is a request for determination of applicability, Lee Burbank Highway, Boston Gas Company, installing a new natural gas pipeline along Lee Burbank Highway and into parcels located at 101 and 51 Lee Burbank. All the work is going to be completed underneath existing asphalt. If you want to state your name and.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Cal Koptowitz, from the HPA, and represent Boston Gas for this project. Apologies, I've got my tripod, but I'll just hold up kind of the board here, and I can just run through the project real quick.
We still have a lot of people on. Who is it? Yeah, just hold it up. Just kind of just show us, where it's originating from and where the spurs are going. Oh, yeah, turn your microphone on. There you go.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. I'll repeat my name again. Kellen Kontowitz from VHB. We're representing Boston Gas for this project. So the proposed project, focus on this one on the left, or my left, your right-hand side. It's a proposed gas main that's going to run along Lee Burbank Highway. It's going to be located, I did get confirmation on this since the site visit, along the northbound side of Route 101 here, from where it connects to an existing main. It'll run south to two parcels, 101 Lee Burbank and then 51 Lee Burbank. 101's the northern parcel, 51's the southern parcel, and it's approximately 2,000 linear feet within the highway. And then it is 460 feet on the southern side, and then 670 on the northern side. And so, as mentioned by John, this is entirely underground, no permanent impacts above ground. It is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, as you can see here, with the floodplain, and there are wetlands located on around the perimeter of the 101 Lee Burbank. So we are in a little portion of buffer zone here. So I'll flip to the site plan here, which might be a little difficult to see, but outlined in red are those gas mains that are coming into the private parcel. And then in green here is our wetland with the associated buffer zone that we just barely overlap. And so Boston Gas is proposing mitigation measures, including pavement sweeping, appropriate soil stockpiling. I know there's more in the RDA that are eluding me right now, but mitigation measures to make sure we are not impacting resource areas throughout this project. And this is a minor activity within buffer zone and exempt from essentially permitting for the portion within buffer zone. And as explained, the portion within land subject coastal storm flowage will have no impact on the resource area because it's entirely underground. And that's the reason we're requesting a negative determination from the commission.
Yeah.
So happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
So we walked this down last week. It's all underneath existing asphalt. They have a fairly detailed standard they do the work towards. So I'm recommending a motion to approve a negative determination based on it's not going to alter the resource area.
Motion to approve negative determination.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So last, our 3 certificates of compliance. Excuse me while I get. So on 89 or 29 Avon Street was experienced some flooding, so the city did a project to improve the drainage there, and they had to go and get right-of-ways from a couple of owners, 3 owners, to go underground with this drain line and improve the drainage. So when we issued the notice of intent, we simply said, make sure you get a right-of-way of agreement from all the owners before you start the work. The city did that. I found that on Registry of Deeds. It's kind of a notice to those 3 owners. But the other thing they did is they recorded the order of conditions on those 3 properties. 29 Avon is selling. This has held up a closing. The work is complete. It's been complete. The city should have come to us much earlier. So I'm proposing someone make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 29 Avon, and also, because it's the same project, for 1064 North Shore Road and for 18 Bay Road, all at the same time, so that we can send these out and then those owners can clear up their deeds.
So I'll make a motion for a certificate of compliance for all 3 properties.
Right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Where's my agenda? I got it. Really nothing much on enforcement correspondence. The only thing I really want to bring up on open discussion is, again, thank you guys. I know it was a long meeting. Thanks for being flexible for tonight. Our next meeting is July 10th. There are a couple of things we've been approached about that are going to require us to meet. I don't have anything else. You have anything, Lorena? The hybrid meeting go okay?
Do we want to continue with the hybrid format going forward?
It doesn't impact me. It just requires someone to manage it. And so that means technically as commissioners, you know, when you're in Las Vegas, you could carve out a couple of hours to attend a meeting via Zoom. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I prefer attending in person personally, but the Zoom is a nice option if you just can't, so. Does anyone have anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don't need a second to
Aye.
adjourn. All right, we're adjourned.